Y'all do any stock trading right now? I do. Been messing around with it. Not messing around. I do some. Anyway, let's find the dog. Where is he?
Hey, Bo.
Oh! What are you doing under here, bro? Hi, buddy. Alright, we'll let you get back to doing your thing, bro. I love this shirt. Anyway, today what we are talking about is Turner Motorsport CSL style intake versus the cheap intake, the cheap one that I had on my S54. And again, I say this in most of my videos, but if you're new to the channel, smash that subscribe because I have a ton of stuff coming up with the E46 with the S54 swap, S2000, TBD, to be determined what I do with this. And then the E92, which I have yet to start on, but I am jacked to get that thing going. I can't wait for that car. That thing's gonna be a monster. But today, what I wanted to quickly talk about is Turner's CSL style intake, which retails for about 1,500 bucks versus the cheap eBay carbon fiber intake that you can get on eBay for like, it's like 600 or 700 bucks. And to preface this a little better, I have an E36 with an S54 swap that doesn't use all of the ports that a standard E46 M3 intake manifold would use. So like majority of, what's up, buddy? Majority of the ports that are used on my cheap eBay intake are capped off. There is the crankcase vent that is used, and then on the bottom, what's up, bud? On the bottom of that, on the bottom of the intake, there is the the vent going into the oil pan. So those are the only two ports that I actually use. So a lot of the vacuum line, or a lot of the ports on the intake manifold, I actually have capped off. But again, this is just a quick overview of the two intakes side by side so you can get a better look at kind of quality and how they're constructed. So we'll start off with the cheap eBay intake. Here's this guy, and as you can see, I mean, the weave for weave, this weave looks okay. But then you come over to Turner's and it just looks better. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm not an intake or a carbon snob. I don't know what weave pattern this is or anything like that, so couldn't tell you. But this just, not only does it feel thicker, feel like girthier, it just looks better. This feels like a thin layer of carbon. When I mounted this, one of the reasons I got rid of it was because it didn't mount properly, and it would actually hit my strut tower bar, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get rid of it, so I could utilize my strut tower bar. But then on the intake side itself, this kind of shrinks down to fit this style of filter. And one of the problems with that is when you go to tighten this filter, unless you have some double-sided tape like I have here, which I'll remove, but unless you have that around there, then the intake inherently just kind of slides down. And I had a lot of problems with the intake filter, literally just like, I mean, there's not much room in my engine bay anyway, so it wouldn't ever leave a gap between here and there, but it would just be loose. It'd barely be connected to that. So what I did was throw some double-sided tape on there and then put the intake over that double-sided tape, and that fixed that. But then another one of the things that were really bothering me were these runners, or I call them runners in every video, but the tubes that go into the throttle bodies. You can see some of them are still attached. Here's what goes into the intake manifold itself, and let's see if I can get this with one hand. So this piece right here is inserted into one of those holes, and it's kind of like bonded in there. That's how you get it. But over time, mine just came loose, and then these rubber pieces started to actually move around, and these metal pieces you could just twist and pull out. And again, I epoxied these back in there, and they still came out. You can get them in there, they'll stay in there. This will stay mounted to your throttle bodies, but it's just really not confidence inspiring. And it, not only that, it makes it a huge pain in the butt to mount it onto the throttle bodies themselves. I ended up having to go get different silicone boots to mount onto this piece, and then onto obviously the throttle bodies. And again, it was just the biggest pain in the butt to mount this to the throttle bodies itself. It really sucked. And I can't speak for mounting the Turner because I haven't done that yet, but I'm assuming it'll be better, because you come over to the Turner and you see how these pieces are molded, or actually part of the intake. That is so much better. They're not gonna spin, nothing's gonna happen. Not only that, but the height of this should, again, I can't speak to this, but should allow me to run my strut tower bar, because it doesn't have that bow up like this one does. If you see, that has that big bow up, and that is exactly where I would be hitting. Not only that, but this one, again, I'm not an expert at this, has this style of intake where the filter will go inside there. So I'll have to take these apart, separate it, and then I'll stick the flat filter inside there. If you want to see inside, to each of these is a night and day difference. This one is a lot more organized. This one looks professionally done. You come over to this one and you look inside, and it kind of, it still doesn't look bad, but it's just not nearly as neat and tidy as the Turner. Plus, the Turner is more true CSL style, where it utilizes that big horn and you separate it and use the actual BMW filter, whereas again, the cheap eBay one, you just kind of use, I don't even know what filter this is, Canon style, I'm not sure, filter. Again, it works. It produces the sick intake noise. It sounds amazing. You get what you pay for. It works. Trust me, it works. I've done track days with it. I've beat on it. Everything about this thing works. It's just cheap, and it is what it is. This is a lot more of a quality piece. You can tell, you can feel it, you can see it. I mean, just the way like these are molded in there, how they're all similar pieces. Then you come over here and these are just, I mean, it just looks cheaper, right? I mean, my worry too with these is that they would start to spin like these actually did, because obviously if they didn't do enough job to keep those in there, I didn't know if they would do enough job to keep those in there. But again, I don't utilize all the ports. You can see there's one blocked off there, one blocked off there, and then this one goes down to the oil pan right near the dipstick. That's the only one I use besides the crankcase vent. So here, when I install this will be attached to the crankcase vent. This will be capped, and then I'll use the small one on the bottom to drain into the oil pan, and then a few more of these will be capped off. Hey, I've done a little more research, and there's definitely more intakes in like Carbonius and OEM CSL. There's a lot more carbon CSL style intakes than I initially thought, but again, all of them are around $2,000 minimum. If you're going to purchase the Turner kit for your E46, there are some other things you're going to have to buy. You can't just buy the CSL intake. And I'll post a link to a few articles that go through what you actually need to buy to make that work. Because it's not just a straight up kit. Like if you're going to run a CSL intake on your standard E46 M3, then you're going to have to run either an Alpha N tune, or you're going to have to run a CSL tune, which may require a different DME. You're going to have to, there are sensors that you're going to have to need to wire up for both of that, or deletes for both of that. There are a couple different hose kits that you're going to have to get. Again, you're going to need the new air filter for the Turner CSL intake. So it's not just a straight up cost, I believe, or a straight up thing. You can't just buy the intake and be good to go. I believe all said and done, with the Turner intake coming in at like $1,400, if you want to get your E46 M3 to a CSL style intake, I believe out the door you're going to be looking at right around $2,000. Now, is it worth it? My car with the cheap intake and an Alpha N tune made around 311 wheel horsepower and 260 wheel torque, give or take, which was a significant boost from a standard E46 M3. Was that due to the carbon fiber intake? I don't know. I have OEM, or I have CSL headers, or I have Euro headers, so I don't have a cat. Then I have a Super Sprint Euro center section, which is no cat. And then I have a Stromong rear, which is obviously just a muffler. So the Stromong rear kind of holds up the flow a little bit, but not that bad. So I really don't have any restriction on the exhaust side. So it could be due to that. It could be due to the Alpha N tune. There's a bunch of different reasons, or the intake could play a role in that as well. I'm not sure. I am going to go back to the dyno once this one is on, but again, it's comparing a CSL style intake to a cheap eBay intake. It's going to be hard because I'm also running a CSL map now instead of an Alpha N tune. But I can switch back to either or. But if you guys want to see a dyno video of this, let me know. I can always go back to Alpha N. It's not the hardest thing in the world. But that is the difference between the Turner Motorsport CSL style intake and the cheap eBay intake. Like I said, if you guys are new to the channel, smash that subscribe. I got a ton of stuff coming up. I am actually trying to install the Turner intake right now. But like I said, I need a few caps because there are a few more ports that need to be blocked off on the Turner intake than I had on my old intake. And I just want to make it look a little more clean. So I need to get a few silicone vacuum caps. And I actually need the the idle control valve hose on the bottom, because I'm going to run that to the Turner intake, as opposed to what is there now, which is, you can just see a little filter. I could run it like this, but I would just rather have the idle control valve hose attached to the intake itself. So again, if you're new to the channel, guys, smash that subscribe. I got a ton of BMW stuff coming up, and I want to pick your guys' brain on what I'm going to do with the S2000, because I'm not decided on that yet. Hope you guys are doing well. See you on the next video. Peace.